Hello and welcome to episode 179 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is January 13th, 2020. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2. And we are both from McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is... so this is a bad idea. We're gonna have to do. I don't know, but we're gonna have to do the free market success story in the beginning to explain to people what just happened. But the show notes page for this episode is mcflugel.com/179, where you will be able to find links to the things we talk about, as well as ways to check out libertymugs.com, where you can check out awesome libertarian themed mugs and whatnot. And also check out possibly the transcripts for this show. And that's what we're going to talk about, the free market success story. When we were getting set up a few minutes before this, instead of hitting record, I accidentally clicked the show subtitles button. And I was waiting for it to kind of roll and go to see what it was. And we were both kind of saying, there's no way they're going to show like real-time subtitles or closed caption or transcripts of what we're doing. And guess what? It did. But unfortunately, it has not learned Rollo McFlugel very well. And so actually got a little bit better there. It actually got Rollo.
Yeah.
But it was, what was it? Rolling
Mick, M-I-C-K.
Yeah, Flugel.
With Slappy Jones, T-O-O, or something like that. Yeah,
and originally when I said the Rollo and Slappy Show, it was like the relevant show.
Yes.
So we're if I can figure out a way to post these transcripts, it's just going to be the raw transcripts, because we don't edit our recording, and so we're not going to edit our transcripts,
which are 100% accurate.
Yes. But it's actually pretty neat. It's
very cool.
Yeah, it's something that not that long ago it would have probably cost a lot of money to have this, and then not long before that, it just wouldn't have existed. So I think that's pretty neat. But Slappy, is this going to put transcribers out of business?
Probably some of them, but if you're working in court, it helps to have a neutral third-party human witness to all the transcripts, which is why the transcribers always have their name on their transcripts when you buy them from them. They're, in the court record, it will have the court reporter there because they want the witness. So if it puts them out of business, they'll still need someone there sitting and actually listening as the transcript is printed up. But I can see the closed caption court reporters going the way of the dinosaur or whatever else. All the court reporters who used to sit by on Skype, maybe that's what's happening right now. There's probably a room full of court reporters listening to us, typing as they go.
What if all transcribers are actually just using what we're using right now, and instead are just kind of goofing off and, I don't know, playing Candy Crush or something?
It would be smart of them. And that could be true because they don't have letters on their keys. So how do they know what they're typing? The answer is that they're not typing anything.
Right. That's the only possible explanation.
Right.
We have just cracked the case on something. This isn't good. And you know what? They're probably going to want to have a hit out on us, because they're not going to be very happy that we figure them out. And they're all going to get fired from their jobs. So if only we could have a way that people could, or we could hire someone to have us escape from these people and escape what they think is justice. So what do you think about that? Do we have like a story? Do we have like an article or a story kind of lined up?
You know what? It's
Similar to
funny that you asked that because I was just reading an article that one of my friends sent me. I guess he sent it to me a couple of weeks ago. But you just talked about escaping a group of people who want to get you. And, yeah, I thought of that story. So I don't have – I mean, it was a couple of weeks ago when I got it. I don't have the actual article on me. But what happened was there was a executive for Nissan, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
who was working in Japan – and had some he was accused of some financial misconduct. What exactly that financial misconduct was, I have no idea. I couldn't find it. But he was in Japan. He said he did not feel he was going to get a fair trial in Japan because he is not Japanese. I believe that was one of his reasons.
Yeah,
He also,
and they just have like extremely high conviction rates.
yeah. He mentioned a whole bunch of things that I was like, wow, that almost sounds like the United States. No, there's high conviction rates, and apparently if you're not Japanese, there's a very high conviction rate. And he thought his coworkers, the other executives there, kind of turned against him, and he had nowhere to go, so he skipped town. He got out of Japan and went back to his native
Lebanon.
was it Lebanon?
Yeah.
Yeah, the flag with the tree. So he went back to Lebanon where people he appears to be safe. There's no extradition agreement and doesn't he had a press conference maybe a week ago or spoke publicly about what was going on. It seems to be doing okay. So what does that have to do with anything about libertarianism?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Well, a coworker brought this up to me the other day or a couple weeks ago, and I immediately started thinking about, well, maybe this isn't actually the worst thing in the world. It actually reminded me of an episode we did a couple months ago, or maybe even longer than that, about how to deal with a guy like Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
And someone who commits fraud or some sort of white collar crime that everyone knows who he is. And, if you're going to hire Bernie Madoff to do any sort of financial work for you, you're probably going to want to keep close tabs on him or not really give him that much responsibility, at least in the first place. And he's probably going to have to do his work pretty cheaply because he does come with a lot of baggage. And so this kind of made me think about it a similar way. I mean, let's give this guy the benefit of the doubt. I don't know, like you said, he's guilty of, what was it, financial misbehavior
I think
or something
he was just accused. I don't think he ever went to trial.
Right. So he's in a situation where, and let's just say that this is just like some victimless crime. It's a nonsense thing.
Yeah, let's assume that. I mean, we don't know exactly what it was.
Yeah, so we'll say it's a victimless crime, and we'll also say, and I think there is some truth to this from everything I've heard, that since he is not a native Japanese person, that they will not treat him very fairly. They do tend to have some bigotry in Japan, and so let's build this case up for him, and so he hires some people. Apparently they're like ex-special forces or something, and they kind of smuggle him out of the country without
That can't be an easy country to escape.
No.
It's surrounded by water.
Yeah. Apparently they flew off on a private jet.
Yeah.
So he escapes, and he's in a place where he doesn't have to worry about having the Japanese authorities kind of get a hold of him. They apparently sent something to, I think, Interpol or something, not an arrest warrant, but just being like, hey, can you guys help us out and get this guy? So I don't really know what ended up happening. It's probably still a fluid situation without a resolution.
Do you know how Interpol works, by the way?
I do not.
Neither do I. I have no idea.
Yeah. I thought it was like strictly a British thing for some reason.
Sounds like it should be pronounced that way.
Right. Um, so I think this is kind of obviously he had to pay these people to smuggle them out. So I think it's kind of an interesting kind of market that can get created here for people that are going to be on trial and think that they're going to have not being treated fairly or being accused of a crime that or charged with a crime that is kind of shouldn't be a crime. All these reasons that we would say that these that we've talked about before on this show about how there's many situations you can find yourself being in that you are likely to go to prison and you really don't deserve it. If you're willing to pay someone to take the risk to come and smuggle you out, I think this is a good outcome for something like that.
I do too. The trouble is, and I'm no attorney, but aiding and abetting, and I mean, I guess we're talking about not necessarily, or are you talking about necessarily today?
Sure.
So the problem is aiding and abetting, right? So if you get caught helping someone escape, even if it's after the fact, the guy's gone, he goes into this other country where he's with his people who like him, and he goes, yeah, Rollo McFlugel flew me out of there. Well, now Rollo McFlugel is going to have to pay someone to get him out of there. Because they have those laws, those aiding and abetting laws, where basically if you don't rat on your friends, you're a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it tough.
Right, and that's part of the risks associated with doing all this stuff, and it brings the price up. So that's one of the things. I mean,
and that's So that would obviously. I mean, what I'm saying is, there would still be a market, I guess, but it's almost like a one and done type thing. Like you would have to pay me a lot of money, I get you out of there, and then I'm gone.
Who's gone?
Me, who helped you escape.
Oh yeah.
There's no like setting up like, hey, call my guy. He's good at getting people out. Like, you're done once that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But there still could be a market for it.
And there would actually be and there would be incentive for the people doing the smuggling to get you in a place where you're not likely to get caught again and have to.
Yeah, of course.
Rat on the guys that got you out. So. I think it's
No, whatever. I was, just to, like, if say I set up, it's kind of stupid. Let's just move on.
Okay. So that's kind of an easy situation for us to think about because we can set it up to say, hey, this guy shouldn't be going to prison. This is an affront to true justice. So it's very easy for us to sit there and say, yeah, it would be good to kind of smuggle them out. Just like you could say if someone broke Rolf Solberg out of prison, then that wouldn't be.
But then that would set up, would you really want to live in a society where some executive steals like $10 million from his company and then pays someone $1 million to get him out?
Yes.
Why?
Yes. So that's
you hate poor people and you want to see rich people be successful and continue living.
So that's where it gets interesting because it's easy to talk about the people that don't deserve it, but if they're having access to these black market escape markets, I don't know. We're probably going to call these things 8,000 different things.
Yeah.
That means that
the benefit of that too is if anyone criticizes us, we'll be like, no, we are talking about escape markets there,
right?
Not, professional runners.
That's true.
So, anyway,
or we'll just appeal to the very wonderful transcript and say that's what we said.
We have the proof.
Mm-hmm. Or we'll just say that Mick Flugel said that. Or actually, now it's MC Flugel.
MC Flugel, like the flugelhorn.
Yeah, it's MC Flu like that. We can't do this because it's just going to be too distracting. But
MC Flute like.
MC Flute.
All right, back to the story.
I don't.
Okay, so we were saying, you said, okay, what about, or I said, what about the rich people who just, like, you're a CEO of a big corporation,
Yeah.
you know where the money is, and you just take it, and then you know you can pay someone to get you out of there. Like, this is not a good guy. He just stole
Mhm.
money from his coworkers and his employees that was going to be reinvested into the company or paid to employees, and he just pocketed it, took off. And since, what does he care? He took 10 million. Let's say the market price to get out of there is $1 million. So he's still ahead of the game by 9 million, and he's out somewhere else living nicely. And you're saying you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with it in the sense that I think that scenario or that environment, that system with these private escape markets provides a better outcome for trying to get as close to justice, or not even justice, getting as close to a better functioning society as possible. Because we know, like, we could say as a given that the current system is really, really bad. And we'll talk about the American court system. We've talked about it a lot. A lot of people get railroaded. It's even people that do bad stuff. The prison system is not a good place for them to go.
Sometimes you
So,
get really harsh sentences, plus just the life,
and I don't think that the idea that you should just punish people without any appeal to restitution is a good thing. It doesn't help the victims. It doesn't help the actual criminals, because I think I would rather live in a world where we try to rehabilitate instead of just simply punish.
So you don't think that spending, say, 25 years in prison is paying a debt to society?
No.
Okay.
Because it's like, I don't know, it's not really, you're not paying a debt to society.
I mean, that's what they say, though, right?
Right. But the reality is that citizens are paying
to keep you there.
Right. Are paying
you and.
Yeah, citizens are paying money to the prison industrial complex. That's the reality of it. Who is, like, if you commit a crime against me and you go to prison for 10 years, like, we're going to say that, oh, this is your debt to society. You're paying a debt to society. Well, you didn't commit a crime against a society. You committed a crime against me.
You committed a crime against the United States of America, like it says on the court dockets.
Yeah.
It's the most absurd thing.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy the way we have it now, and it doesn't make any sort of sense. So,
well, that's why they have civil court.
Right. Yeah.
It is. That's what, like, you commit a murder, that's a crime against society, and then you can be tried in civil court, where that's where you pay restitution.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's kind of, it's crazy that both exist at the same time.
Yeah.
So let's say that he is a bad guy. Let's say someone murdered somebody, and he's going to be tried, and he's guilty, or at least we can say that we know he committed the murder.
He did it. Yeah.
And so he pays someone to smuggle him out of wherever he's being held before he can be tried, and he goes someplace where he takes on this, like, I guess he has to have a new identity or something. Let's just make the case like that. Talk about it like that, because you can't, if you're a known killer and they want you, then you can't just be like showing your face like normal, like, haha, I was in this holding cell and now I'm not in there. They're going to rearrest you pretty quickly. So you need to have the ability to, or at least you have the desire to not get recaught. So the reason I'm saying all this like that is because if you have to pay a lot of money to avoid what's about to happen to you as far as your trial and likely prison sentence goes, you're not going to want to have to pay that again, right?
Sure.
So it creates a situation where your bad behavior, your crime, puts almost like a price tag on your freedom. And the worse the worse the crime that you commit is, the more expensive that it's likely to be to get busted out and smuggled out for your freedom. So there's a strong incentive for you to hopefully kind of change the way you are, change the way you act. So, going back to that Bernie Sanders, or not Bernie Sanders, I wish, Bernie Madoff thing. If he didn't go to prison for his crimes, it's not like he would just be able to go and do the same exact thing that he did that got him in trouble before. He would really have to change his behavior if he wanted to have any sort of life in the world, in kind of in the regular world.
Right.
So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I mean, look at someone committed a murder and it's a big deal. People are talking about it, it's on the news or whatever. Your face is going to be known. It's going to be really hard to get you out, or harder than, some other crime. Some crimes you could probably just leave on your own, like, you shoplift and whatever. Your picture might get up on the wall at the store. Might never be allowed in that store again, but they're not going to. It's not worth it for the dollar candy bar that you stole for them to go send a team out to find you. They just kind of ban you from coming in again. But a worse crime, people will probably more likely know about it or have heard about it, especially living in a free society where there's a little more responsibility on individually. You can't just kind of assume the state takes care of it. Although, maybe not, because we would just assume the market's taking care of it. Just like I don't care who makes burgers. I just know I can go get them. But there would be people looking for someone who commits a serious crime, I assume. So to get that person out, it would be very expensive. And how much is that person willing to pay? And the person who helps them is then also going to be marked if he gets caught helping them. So it sets up the correct, I would say, incentive structure.
Yeah, the worse crime that you commit, the higher the risk it's going to be, because there's going to be more of an incentive. We'll just say the government to make sure you don't get out. They're trying to actually save face, or at least have the public perceive that they're taking care of the bad criminals and everything.
Yeah.
So
like when they put Jeffrey Epstein on suicide watch.
Yeah. So, it's a lot worse. Worse if someone that steals a candy bar gets smuggled out versus someone that murders a serial murder that murders a bunch of people. So, like you said, the price is going to be a lot higher to get the serial murderer out, not only because it's going to be more difficult to do it because there's going to be more security around them, but also because it's a lot more risk.
Yes.
Because if they get caught, it's a much more serious crime. Because the government has to kind of prioritize.
More laws. Yeah.
Well, they have to prioritize who they're getting, because let's say that this if this started happening and you had this like kind of market that was growing where you had people smuggling these criminals out, and you had this wide range of criminal or of crimes that were committed by these people, the government's going to have to prioritize stuff, right? Because they're going to want to divert most of their resources to the worst criminal.
Right.
Or not
Whereas in a
divert the
market,
resource. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say in a market that would probably be pretty specialized. Like, you call on so and so to go find a murderer. They're going to be a little more expensive, or maybe there's tie-ins with insurance companies for this that we've talked about before. And then you may have other people who are better at smaller crimes, and same thing with courts, you know. But government works the way it does. You have one thing, one group in charge of everything. And with a market, you have as much as it makes sense to have.
Mm-hmm. So what this might actually start incentivizing or create, what it might start doing is that since the government's going to have to direct their resources to making sure that the worst criminals stay behind bars, they might have to not care about the ones that are committing the lesser offenses.
Right.
And so if they have to if they're bringing these people in for these little silly crimes, and they're able to pay a certain amount of money to be broken out, and they can't do anything about it, then really is there a point of bringing them into the first place? All it is just a drain on their resources and making them look stupid. Nothing's actually happening. They're arresting people, spending time and resources on them, and they just get broken out. So they're at a net negative there for a lot of reasons. Whereas they could instead be saying, well, if we don't direct these resources to these petty crimes, these small crimes, then we could be using those resources to try to secure these bad people. So I think it creates a good incentive structure all the way around, whether it's these private markets and the government. Now it's not perfect. If you bust a serial killer out and they start going murdering people again, well, that's not good. But it's the world's not perfect, and we're trying to figure out solutions to these problems. But the point is, I mean, we still have serial murders happening today. We still have
What's
all
the
sorts
clearance
of
rate on murders?
Oh, I don't know.
The clearance rate doesn't mean conviction; it means arrest. I'm pretty sure it means arrest.
Yeah, and we all know they're normally not convicting the right people anyway. So I don't think it's that great. No, a lot of violent crimes don't get solved.
Yeah, well, if
So
you look at violent crimes, yeah, a ton of them don't. Murder is 62.6 according to this
I mean, that's not
Wikipedia.
really great.
Aggravated assault is 55.6, forcible rape 41.8, robbery 26.2, larceny 18.3, motor vehicle theft 13, burglary 12.9.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, those aren't good
not Hall
numbers
of
at all.
Fame numbers.
No.
Not when people have the impression because of these TV shows that, like, if you breathe in a crime scene, they got your DNA and they will find you.
Yeah. So yeah, we're not trying to say that like this is a perfect solution where we're gonna stop all crime and have people dealt with the best ways possible. All we're saying is that it creates
Nice
an incentive
structure.
right that will make it a little bit better. We're not saying we're going to do away with crime, but we're getting
do
rid
away
of
with a lot of crimes.
well, yeah, it would make it so that a lot of crimes wouldn't be crimes anymore, which I think would be a good thing. And also, this is kind of like a stretch to say like the market would be so strong that this would be a thing. Although with Bitcoin kind of coming in with all the smart contracts you can create with it, that you could maybe do something like, hey, if I get arrested and you break me out of this, this place, then I'll get you some Bitcoin for it. Since we are gaining in the ability to transact pretty privately. So if Bitcoin does become a lot more valuable, it could create interesting markets like this. Now, I don't think would be so widespread anyway. Even in that case, I don't think it would be so widespread that it would cause governments to stop trying to arrest and charge people for victimless crimes.
Nothing will ever stop that.
The point is that if you kind of break it down and just kind of isolate it like this, it's reasonable to do the thought experiment and come to this conclusion. So
right.
Any movement in this direction is a positive thing, right?
I agree.
Yeah, like taking the ceteris paribus kind of thing. If you hold all else equal, you can kind of, man, this chat is so distracting because not the chat, the transcripts, because ceteris paribus came out as ceter asparagus.
I agree.
Hi, Gray. Yeah. Actually, let me just minimize it because it's getting rough.
Distracting.
Yeah. We have to figure. Well, maybe next week we'll have a free market success story that makes us not be so distracted by our free market success story this week. But the point I was trying to make was that it would be like what's a good example? Okay, if I don't know, I'm holding a pen right now. This is what I usually end up giving examples. My examples usually are pens because I end up no, I have an even better one. Tractors. Let's say that I decide that I want to buy 10 tractors. Is that going? Do we know for sure that we're going to have an increase in the in tractor prices if I buy 10 tractors? Because demand went up, and I just took away 10 tractors from the supply of available tractors. Right, it depends. That's the right answer, because we don't know what other factors and variables are being twisted and turned.
Are out there for what and
right.
Whatever.
But we can say that if we hold everything else equal, and we say that I buy 10 tractors, that's going to mean that the price, the price is going to go. That's going to push the price up.
Yeah.
That one action right there.
Pressure on pushing the price up.
Yes. With everything else going on, we just don't know. I mean, the economy is just too complex to be able to know for sure what that result's going to be, which is why so many people make the mistake when they see, we talk about like a minimum wage law. City wants to increase the minimum wage. People say, oh, it's going to cause more unemployment. They pass the law that raises the minimum wage, and unemployment doesn't go down or doesn't go up. And people dunk on all these stupid people that were saying that how it was going to cause more unemployment. Look, you're so wrong. You're such idiots. But it's like, well, an economy in a city is a not such a simple thing where there's one variable that controls unemployment. There's a lot of stuff going on. So maybe there was some like major business opened up or started flourishing there that started employing a lot of people.
They often do like tax abatements to move in. And
there's all sorts of things,
all kinds of stuff to encourage business to move in.
Or even if they aren't doing, if the government's not doing anything, just there's so many variables, so many things that could be happening that you can't just. It's very wrong to take one thing, look at the result without acknowledging, or it's bad to look at the cause and effect in something like that without acknowledging everything else. Observing the cause and effect. Much like if I showed you a math equation, and it was like x squared plus 2y minus 3z to the fourth equals q. And I said, I'm gonna add 1 to x. Is q gonna go up or down? And you say up. Well, unless you know for sure what I did with x and y with those variables, and you have no way of knowing how x is going to affect q overall. But you can say, well, if we hold, y and z equal, then we know that x is going to cause q to do this. I think I'm beating this horse pretty dead.
I think you are too.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to make the point, because someone might have been listening up to this point and being like, are you crazy? Do you really think that there's going to be these escape markets that are going to be busting like every criminal out of prison? But the point is that it influences the cost of the government doing business and what it does. It makes it more expensive for them to have to do everything that they're doing. And I think that's a good thing.
Likewise.
As expenses, like it's costing them more, that they're, there is a limit on, we talk about all the stuff, how they have, the benefits they get from seniorage and printing money and taxation. However, that is not an infinite well that they can go into. They have to be somewhat careful with all of that stuff. And if you start making it too expensive for them to do stuff, then they're going to have to figure something else out. So it's, I think it's a net positive for society if markets develop that start breaking people out of prison. And it's gonna, like we were saying before, if this worries you, if free markets worry you, and people doing with their money what they want to do worries you, just remember that all of this stuff would be extraordinarily expensive.
It'd be insanely expensive, I would assume. I mean, we actually don't know, but I assume. Now, if there's a bunch of popular people who, like, no one's really thinking that person is dangerous, there may be a lot of support to get that person out, and they would just raise enough money.
Sure. Yeah, this stuff could be kind of crowdfunded too.
Yeah.
Also, if on the flip side of that, if everyone really thought that this guy was a bad person, you might not have anyone willing to take the risk to bust him out, because there would probably be people. Not only would they be wanting to go after the person that escaped, but also the guys that are helping him escape. It would create just not a good environment for them to kind of operate from then on out.
Right.
I had another point about the prioritization of the criminals, but yeah, I mean that's just that's going to help anything that's going to add risk to these things. So anything that the likelihood that or just how bad the crime is, basically the likelihood that people think that they might commit the crime again, it's going to increase the risk on the smugglers, and so it's going to make them charge more money to be willing to do it.
Right.
So I think, like you said before, the incentives align very, very well. It's amazing that we can talk about something like this, kind of do this thought experiment, and talk about how good the incentive structure is. That just kind of how it would naturally play out, the incentives are correct. Whereas you look at a government system, and the incentive structure, it's like a game of Boggle, where you just jumble everything up and try to like piece stuff back together.
But I thought we have private prisons, and you love private stuff.
Yeah, it's more like a fascist system. I mean, or a crony capitalist system. It's not good. I mean, it's the government, instead of just doing stuff themselves, they just contracted it out to others
so that their buddies can make money.
Yeah,
and there's still not a market for prison. It's still one customer, essentially.
Yes. Yes,
just because someone's allowed to profit off it from taxpayer dollars doesn't make it private.
yeah, and they can lobby the government to benefit them, so they're of course lobbying for more of these bad laws so they can fill their prisons up.
I believe, I'm not sure, but they get paid per person in prison. So if you think prisons are in favor of ending drug laws or having shorter sentences, and they have a lot of sway with Congress.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the more kind of disgusting setups I can think of.
Yeah.
Is this prison industrial complex where it's just, man, they're just cattle for these people to make a buck off them. It's pretty disgusting. Whereas if you have, I think we talked about before, like the Bob Murphy explanation for how prisons would work in a free society. I think it's a much better thing where people will kind of check themselves into what the free market alternative to a prison would be, where they're kind of more there to protect themselves for people that want to get revenge against them, and also as a way for them to work to pay restitution for people and hopefully restore some degree of their reputation so they can go back to society and re-enter it, to be like, hey, this is my basically like a proof of work that I understand what I did, and so I took myself away, worked on paying off the restitution, so please accept me back.
Yeah, if it's going to be a repeat offender, it's going to get very expensive very quick.
Yeah, and so it's another situation where the incentives line up very well, and it eliminates that pipeline to prison too. You would just have insurance markets on top of that trying to charging premiums on people based on their risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think it's another situation, bringing up insurance. I think risk is just like such one of the more fascinating ideas out there that helps direct how resources should be spent. I do it a lot in my own job as an engineer. We have limited amounts of money to spend to secure everything in the plant, and we decide where we're going to spend money based on risks. What's the thing what's the combination of most likely and highest consequence? What hits the kind of the highest risk threshold with those two kind of variables kind of plugged into it, and that's what we're going to attack. That's what we're going to go after and fix, and we're going to go down the line and continually kind of evergreening this thing, and insurance companies do the same. So that's kind of all I had. I think it's hopefully it spawned some discussion. I'd love to hear what people have to say about this. Not something I ever thought of before. It was kind of funny how this story kind of triggered this whole thing in my head, and I think it's kind of
interesting. It's fun to talk about too.
Yeah,
it's not like this isn't policy prescription. It's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, we can
not
sit
anytime
here
soon anyway, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah, we talk about the kind of white bread stuff all the time as libertarians, and talk about minimum wage and gun laws, and it's just like, yeah, okay, but this actually makes you think a little bit, and apply the basics that to something that seems kind of crazy and wacky and counterintuitive, really. Like, would you? I don't think if someone said this to me, like, yeah, there should be markets for busting people, actual criminals out of prison. I don't know that I would say, like, yeah, that's probably a bad idea. I would probably react that way. But when you think about it, it actually creates a pretty interesting incentive structure for people to not commit crimes again, because it puts a a very real cost on them being able to have freedom. So we already went through the free market success story. Or did you have something else to say there?
Yeah. Real quick, because we had that episode last week where we had Buck on and we were talking about the Libertarian Party. He got me thinking about the party. And do you know who the new frontrunner is for the nomination of president for the Libertarian Party?
I do, actually.
Is that the first primary?
I think so.
So he's in the lead.
Yeah.
Vernon Supreme, 2020.
And he cleaned up.
He did. And if he wins the nomination, I will absolutely join the LP.
Statist. I think it's hilarious.
It's the funniest
this
thing.
happened, but
I love it.
It will not cause me to. Although that was the one thing when we were talking about it this morning, texting back and forth about it. That was like, this is an angle I never thought of.
Did not think they'd do this.
So this actually made me reconsider.
Fun and laugh.
What's that?
If it was a party that just laughed and had fun and made fun of politicians, that would be the greatest political party in the history of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like Alice Cooper's party. Gonna have a wild party.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what it should be. I mean, if you're gonna have, if political parties were just people kind of getting together and having a good time, then I'd be all for political parties.
Free ponies, toothbrushes.
I think that we should bring the parties back to parties.
Yeah. Well, that's all I had. I wanted to put that news out there. While he is the front runner, and I'm sure, if isn't New Hampshire always kind of an indicator on how things are going to go?
I don't know if that applies to the LP or not, but
well, if it does, this is going to be a fun summer.
Yeah. Man, you just came right out and just dunked all over Buck, who, by the way, we're going to have back on the show to kind of...
This has not been cleared by the committee yet.
Well, you're always basically fired, so it doesn't matter.
All right. We'll see if Buck listens to this much of the episode.
Maybe. I don't know. People might get thrown off because we did the free market. That's what I worry, that since we did the free market success story basically immediately, that's
the end.
That's the normal trigger for people to be like, oh, it's the end of the show. So we might have lost everybody already.
Probably did. And it probably had nothing to do with the content. It was definitely because we had the free market success story up front.
Yeah. Man, creatures of habit. What are you going to do? But the show notes page for this episode will be mcflugel.com/179. We will have the article that we talked about, the original one that we were reading a couple weeks ago. There might be, if I can figure out how to do it and it doesn't take much time, I will put up the transcript somewhere in there. It'll be kind of an interesting read there, I'm sure. And check out libertymugs.com. We are so close to that announcement that I want to make about Liberty Mugs. So close.
Getting there.
But not quite ready yet. Made leaps and bounds with it this weekend. So I think that's it. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week.
Peace.